மருத்துவமனையில் சிகிச்சை முடிந்து வீடு திரும்பினார் விஜயகாந்த். பூரண குணமடைந்து விட்டதாக மருத்துவமனை நிர்வாகம் அறிக்கை. செங்கல்பட்டில் சரக்கு ரயில் தடம் புரண்டதால் மின்சார ரயில் சேவையில் பாதிப்பு. சென்னை கடற்கரையிலிருந்து செங்கல்பட்டிற்கு பதிலாக சிங்கப்பெருமாள் கோவில் வரை மட்டுமே புறநகர் ரயில்கள் இயக்கம். ரயில் சேவை ரத்தானது தெரியாமல் செங்கல்பட்டு ரயில் நிலையத்தில் குவிந்த பயணிகள் 2 மணி நேர காத்திருப்புக்கு பிறகு திரும்பிச் சென்றனர். மழைநீர் வடியாததால் சென்னை பூந்தமல்லியில் 4 பள்ளிகளுக்கு இன்று விடுமுறை. பள்ளியை தூய்மைப்படுத்த ப்ளீச்சிங் பவுடருக்கு பதிலாக சுண்ணாம்பு தெளிக்கப்பட்டதால் அதிர்ச்சி. சென்னை எர்ணாவூரிலிருந்து 20 சதுர கிலோமீட்டர் பரப்பளவுக்கு எண்ணெய் கசிவால் கடும் பாதிப்பு. சுற்றுச்சூழலுக்கு ஈடு செய்ய முடியாத இழப்பை ஏற்படுத்தும் என கடலோர காவல்படை அறிக்கை. எண்ணெய் கழிவுகளை அறிவியல் பூர்வமாக அகற்ற சிறப்பு நிபுணர்களின் உதவியை நாட தமிழ்நாடு அரசு முடிவு. எண்ணெய் கழிவு விபத்துக்களை கையாண்ட அனுபவம் உள்ள துறைசார் நிபுணர்களை நியமிக்க திட்டம். தற்போதைய அண்மை செய்தியை பார்க்கிறோம். காஷ்மீர் சிறப்பு அந்தஸ்து வழக்கில் தற்போது உச்சநீதிமன்றத்தில் தீர்ப்பு வாசிக்கப்படுகிறது. நேரலை காட்சிகளை பார்க்கலாம்.
After the issuance of the proclamation, Justice Sawant applied the standard of whether the exercise of power was mala fide or palpably irrational. Justice Reddy observed that the advisability and necessity of the action must be borne in mind by the President. 2. This bench, sitting in a combination of 5 judges, is bound by the decision of the majority in S.R. Bommai on the issue. We also undertook a textual and purposive reading of Article 356 in particular and Part 18 as a whole. We hold that there are limitations on the power exercisable after a proclamation under Article 356 is issued. The following are our reasons. First, the thread that runs through Part 18 of the Constitution, when read as a whole, is that differing levels of executive and legislative power are required to handle an emergency under Article 352 and under Article 356. This principle applies to the exercise of power when a proclamation under Article 356 is in force. Second, Article 356(1) states that the President may, by a proclamation, assume or declare the powers stipulated in clauses A, B, and C of Article 356(1). The powers stipulated in clauses A, B, and C of Article 356(1) are not automatically invoked when a proclamation is issued under Article 356. Third, Article 356(1)(a) does not opt for an all or none formula. The phrase all or any does not indicate that the union government can exercise a part of the functions of the state government and the state government can exercise the remaining, because the suspension of the state government is an automatic consequence of the proclamation under Article 356. It rather indicates that the scope of the power exercised by the union government must depend on the circumstances for issuing the proclamation. Fourth, clauses A, B, and C of Article 356(1) grant the President independent powers. However, the power provided under Clause C is broad enough to encapsulate the power of the President to assume under Clause A and declare under Clause B that the powers of the legislature of the state shall be exercisable by Parliament. Fifth, the principle underlying Article 356(1)(c) is that the exercise of power by the President must be desirable or necessary to give effect to the objects of the proclamation. The commonality in both the necessity and desirability standard is that the exercise of power must have a reasonable nexus with the object of the proclamation. Thus, the principle which runs through Article 356(1)(c) and which also guides the exercise of power under Article 356(1)(a) is that the exercise of power must have a reasonable nexus with the object of the proclamation. And sixth, when a proclamation under Article 356 is in force, there are innumerable decisions which are taken by the union government on behalf of the state government for the purpose of day-to-day administration. Every decision and action taken by the union executive on behalf of the state is not subject to challenge. Opening up challenge to every decision would lead to chaos and uncertainty. It would in effect put the administration in the state at a standstill. Therefore, the following standard is laid down to assess actions under Article 356 after the proclamation has been issued. A. The exercise of power by the President under Article 356 must have a reasonable nexus to the object of the proclamation. B. The person challenging the exercise of power must prima facie establish that it is a mala fide or extraneous exercise of power. After a prima facie case is made, the onus shifts to the union to justify that the exercise of power had a reasonable nexus with the object of the proclamation. And C. The exercise of power by the President for everyday administration of the state is not ordinarily subject to judicial review. The argument of the petitioners that the union government cannot take actions which have irreversible consequences when a proclamation under Article 356 is in force is not accepted. The power of the legislature of the state under Article 357 to repeal or alter or amend a law enacted by Parliament in exercise of the power of the legislature of the state must be read in the context of the amendment introduced by the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Before the amendment, the law to the extent of incompetency would automatically cease to exist after a buffer period and actions done were expressly saved. However, an express repeal by the competent legislature is required for the law to cease to exist after the amendment. The repealing statute would in such case make provisions for actions taken during the subsistence of the legislation. The observations in Krishna Kumar Singh on whether the consequence of an ordinance can subsist even after the ordinance ceases to exist cannot be transposed to interpret the limits of Article 356 because an ordinance which has the effect of a law by its very nature has a limited life. The argument of the petitioners that Parliament can only assume the lawmaking powers of the legislature of the state when the proclamation under Article 356 is issued is not accepted. The purpose of Article 357 is to ensure that while exercising the powers of the legislature of the state, pursuant to a declaration under Article 356(1), Parliament, or as the case may be, the President, are not impeded by an absence of competence which would have impeded the exercise of a similar power in the absence of a proclamation under Article 356. Further, Article 357 does not contain a non-obstante provision which overrides Article 356. To interpret Article 357(1) as a restriction on Article 356(1)(b would be to read in a restriction which the plain terms of the Constitution do not provide. As held above,